Good morning students. Today we are going to see about the topic ASP.NET validation controls. So what is ASP.NET validation controls? It validates the user input data to ensure that useless, authenticated or contradictory data don't get used. Let's get into the topic. The topics we are going to discuss here are the base validator class, the required field validator, the regular expression validator. First one, ASP.NET validate the user input data to ensure that useless, unauthenticated or contradictory data don't get stored. ASP.NET provides following validation controls to validate the data given by the user. The first validator is required field validator. The second one is range validator, the third one is compare validator, the fourth one is regular expression validator, the fifth one is custom validator, the sixth one is validation summary. We have totally 6 validation controls in ASP.NET. For these 6 validation controls, we have one base validator class which is common to all the 6 validation controls. So what is base validator class? The validation control classes are inherited from the base validator class, hence they inherit its properties and methods. Therefore, it would help to take a look at the properties and method of this base class. For the base validator class, we have so many methods and base class and controls. We are going to see one by one now. The first one in the base validator class is control to validate. Indicates the input to control to validate. Next one is display. Indicates how the error message is shown. Next one, enable client script. Indicates whether the client side validation will take place or not. Next one is enabled. Enables or disables the validator. Error message indicates the error string. Text. Error text to be shown if validation fails. In some cases, the validation may fail and the error message will appear at the time. Is valid. Whether the value of the control is valid or not. Set focus on error. It indicates whether in case of an invalid control, the focus should switch to the related input control. Next one is validation group. The logical group of multiple validators where this control belongs. The last base validator class method is validate. The validate method is used to revalidate the control and updates the is valid property. These are the base validator class methods. Next, we are going to see what are the validation controls in ASP.NET one by one. The first control in ASP.NET validation control is required field validator control. The required field validator control ensures that the required field is not empty. That is, the required field in the ASP.NET should not be empty. It is generally tied to the text box to force input into the text box. The syntax for the control is given. ASP.NET, we have to give the keyword required field validator. The first attribute is ID. You should give the ID for the required field validator. Next, you should give the attribute run at, whether you should run at the server or to run at the client. The third one is control to validate, which control we are going to validate. The fourth one is error message. If the box is empty, what error message should be displayed? For example, we can say it as please choose a candidate. The next attribute we should give is initial value. Initial value is nothing but what is the value should be in the text box before user giving the value. So the attributes for the required field validator are the ID, run at, control to validate, error message and initial value. So for the required field validator control, we have 5 attributes. The next validator control we are going to see is range validator control. The range validator control verifies that the input value falls within a predetermined range. It has 3 specific properties. The first property is type. It defines the type of the data. The available value are currency, date, tuple, integer and string. The next property is minimum value. It specifies the minimum value of the range. The third one is maximum value. It specifies the maximum value of the range. So for range validator control, we have 3 properties. The properties are type, minimum value and maximum value. The range validator control is used to verify that the input value falls within a predetermined range. The next validator control we are going to discuss is the compare validator control. Compares a value in one control with a fixed value or a value in another control. The control validator property also has various properties. The first property is type. It specifies the data type. The next property is control to compare. It specifies the value of the input control to compare with. Value to compare. It specifies the constant value to compare with. Operator. It specifies the comparison operator, the available values equal, not equal, greater than or equal, less than or equal, and data type check. That is, what is the type of the data given by the user will be checked using the data type check. So this is known as compare validator control. Compares a value in one control with a fixed value or a value in another control. The next validator control we are going to discuss is regular expression validator. The regular expression validator allows validating the input text by matching against a pattern of a regular expression. A regular expression is set in the validation expression property. That is, a regular expression is validated by the input data given by the user. We have various characters describes the regular expression. The first one is /b matches a backspace, /t matches a tab, /r matches a carriage written, /v matches a vertical tab, /f matches a form field, /n matches a new line, /escape character. So, in order to validate a control using a regular expression, we have to use all these given character escapes. This is used to validate the regular expression given by the user. The next validator we are going to see is custom validator. The custom validator control allows writing application specific custom validation routines for both the client and the server side validation. The above discussed validation control does not support both client side and the server side, but custom validator validates the routines for both the client side as well as the server side. This is the biggest advantage for custom validator control. Next validation control we are going to discuss is validation. The client side validation is accomplished to the client validation function property. The client side validation routine should be written in a scripting language such as JavaScript or VB script. We can use two scripting languages to write the script for the client side validation. The scripting language we use are JavaScript and VB script. Both the scripting languages can be used to write the custom validator control for the client side machines. The server side validation routine must be called from the server validate event handler. The languages we use for writing the server side scripting are .NET language, C# and VB.NET. For client side we use VB script and JavaScript. For server side we use C#, .NET language and VB.NET. Validation summary. The validation summary control does not perform any validation but shows a summary of all error in the page. That is, we have validator by using the validation controls available in the ASP.NET. The use of the validation summary is it does not perform any validation but shows a summary of all the error in the current ASP.NET page. Show summary shows the error messages in specified format. Show message box shows the error messages in a separate window. We have two properties for the validation summary. The first one is show summary. Shows the error messages in the specified format. That is, the error messages will be specified in the user given specified format. The next one is show message box. It shows the error message in a separate window. That is, it is not shown with the given program but it is shown in a separate window. We have two properties for validation summary. The first one is show summary. Shows the error messages in a specified format. The second one is show message box. Shows the error messages in a separate window. The last one we are going to discuss here is validation groups. Complex pages have different groups of information provided in different panels. In such situation, a need might arise for performing validation. That is, in simple static web pages, we don't need proper validation. But for complex pages which have different groups of information provided in different panels, we need proper validation. In such situation, a need might arise for performing validation separately for separate group. So for each panel, we have to perform validation separately. This kind of situation is handled using validation groups. To create a validation group, you should put the input correctly and the validation controls into the same logical group by setting their validation group property. So in order to perform group validation, we have to first group the similar validation controls, and we have to give a common name for the controls which comes under the similar category. If we put the same logical group by setting their validation groups, then we can validate the controls by given control name separately. So the contents we have discussed here are ASP.NET validation controls. We have seen 6 validation controls available in ASP.NET. Thank you.